Selene Wren. After careful consideration, I have made my decision. For the future of the Alpha Kingdom, I cannot accept you as my Luna.
The Great Hall had witnessed countless victories. Kings had been crowned there. Wars had been declared there. Blood oaths had been sworn beneath its towering stone arches. But on that cold autumn morning, the hall stood unnaturally silent. Every elder of the Thane pack occupied their assigned seat. Every noble family had been summoned. Every pair of eyes rested on one woman, Selene Wren. She stood alone in the center of the chamber, dressed in a simple silver gown that looked painfully modest among the wealth surrounding her. She kept her back straight. Her hands rested calmly before her. Only she knew how tightly her fingers were intertwined. At the opposite end of the hall stood Alpha King Leoric Thane. Tall, composed, untouchable. The silver wolf embroidered across his black ceremonial cloak shimmered beneath the morning light. His face revealed nothing. Not regret, not anger, not hesitation, only duty. An elder struck the marble floor with his staff. The sharp crack echoed across the chamber. The Alpha King will now make his declaration. Silence followed. Even the fire burning inside the massive stone hearth seemed quieter. Leoric stepped forward. His gray eyes met Selene's for only a heartbeat. Then he spoke. His voice carried effortlessly through the hall. I, Leoric Thane, reject Selene Wren as my fated mate. The words landed softly. Too softly. No shouting. No cruelty. No raised voice. Just 6 simple words that quietly destroyed an entire future. A murmur spread through the crowd. Some looked relieved. Others looked away. Several elders exchanged satisfied glances. Everything had unfolded exactly as planned. Selene felt the invisible bond between them snap. It was not painful, not in the way she had imagined. It felt colder than pain, like watching a door close forever while realizing no one intended to open it again. She lowered her eyes for a single second, not because she was weak, because she needed one breath. Just one. Then she looked back at him. I accept. Her voice surprised everyone. It did not shake. It did not crack. It carried the quiet certainty of someone who had already survived the worst part long before this moment arrived. The room grew still again. One elder frowned. Another leaned forward as if waiting for tears. They never came. Selene simply inclined her head. Thank you. That single sentence unsettled the room far more than any scream could have. Leoric's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Confusion, only for a heartbeat. Then it disappeared. The escort will prepare supplies for your departure, he said. You may leave Thane territory at sunrise. His tone remained formal, respectful, distant, as though he were concluding a treaty rather than ending a destiny. Selene nodded. I understand. No one noticed her right hand drift briefly toward her abdomen. The gesture lasted less than a second, long enough for her fingertips to brush the place where a tiny heartbeat already existed. Too brief for anyone else to see. Or so she believed. Inside her chest, another voice screamed. Tell him. He deserves to know. Your child deserves a father. The thought lingered for only a moment. Then another memory surfaced. The council's whispered meetings. Political alliances. Marriage negotiations. The pressure placed upon the Alpha. If she spoke now, everything would change. Not because he chose her. Because he would have no choice. She imagined the elders surrounding them within minutes. The unborn child becoming leverage. A future negotiated across conference tables. Her son, or daughter, reduced to a political asset before taking a first breath. Her stomach tightened. No, not like this. If her child was ever acknowledged, it would be because someone chose them, not because power demanded it. She lifted her chin. The decision settled inside her with frightening clarity. The secret would leave this hall with her. Forever. Leoric watched her for another second. For reasons he could not explain, something felt unfinished, almost as though an invisible sentence had been left unsaid. He ignored the feeling. Years of leadership had taught him that hesitation was dangerous. Decisions only worked when carried through completely. So he remained silent. Selene turned away. Every step across the marble floor echoed louder than the last. She did not hurry. She refused to let anyone believe they had broken her. Behind her, conversations slowly resumed. The council discussed trade routes, marriage alliances, border stability, the future of the pack. No one spoke about the woman walking toward the doors. No one realized they had just allowed the future heir of the Alpha King to walk out with her. Outside, the wind carried the scent of approaching rain. Selene stopped at the top of the palace steps. For the first time that morning, she allowed herself to breathe. Her trembling hand rested gently over her stomach. A tiny life, hidden beneath layers of silence. Tears gathered in her eyes, but they never fell. Instead, she whispered a promise no one else would ever hear. I will choose you. You will never spend a single day wondering whether you were wanted, even if I have to become both mother and father. The wind carried her words into the empty valley below. Then she walked forward, without looking back. Behind her, the palace remained magnificent, cold, untouched. Ahead, there was nothing. No home, no family, no certainty. Only a lonely road disappearing into the forest. And somewhere far behind those towering stone walls, the Alpha King believed he had just ended one chapter of his life. He had no idea. The most important chapter had only just begun. Selene never looked over her shoulder. Not once. The palace disappeared behind the endless forest before sunset, swallowed by mist and towering pines. She let it vanish. Some places only held power over you as long as you kept looking back. She refused to give the past that privilege. 3 days later, exhausted and nearly out of food, she arrived in a forgotten village called Dunmere. It was small, quiet, the kind of place travelers passed without remembering its name. To Selene, it felt like freedom. The cottage she rented stood near the edge of the woods. Its roof leaked during heavy rain. The floorboards creaked with every step. The fireplace barely stayed lit through winter nights. It was nothing like the palace she had left. She preferred it. For the first time in years, every choice belonged to her. No counsel, no politics, no expectations. Only tomorrow, and the tiny heartbeat growing inside her. The woman who rented her the cottage introduced herself simply. My name is Petra. She was nearly 60, with silver hair tied into a loose braid and hands rough from decades of tending herbs. She asked only one question. Are you running from someone? Selene considered the answer, then smiled faintly. I'm running towards someone. Petra studied her for several seconds. She never asked another question. Some people understood silence better than words. Winter arrived early that year. The nights became colder. The mornings became harder. Selene worked wherever she could. Cleaning, gathering medicinal plants, delivering supplies, grinding herbs. Anything that paid enough to keep food on the table. She often returned home long after sunset. Her back ached. Her feet burned. But every night, she rested both hands across her growing stomach and whispered the same promise. We're getting closer. Months passed. Snow melted. The first flowers appeared beside the stream outside the cottage. One quiet morning, her son entered the world. He barely cried. Instead, he opened his eyes almost immediately. Gray, soft, impossible to mistake. For one terrifying second, she forgot how to breathe. Those eyes, the exact same shade she had forced herself to forget. She looked away, then looked back again. No, she would not allow fear to steal this moment. She gathered the baby into her arms. You are not someone's mistake. She kissed his forehead. You are my greatest choice. She named him Rowan. Not after an alpha, not after a king, not after anyone. A name that belonged to no family but his own. Life settled into a rhythm. Simple, demanding, beautiful. Every morning before sunrise, Selene prepared herbs with Petra. By afternoon, she visited sick villagers. By evening, she returned home to Rowan. She slept very little. She worried constantly. She smiled more than she expected. People soon noticed something unusual. She possessed remarkable instincts. She remembered every remedy after hearing it once. She recognized illnesses before symptoms fully appeared. She remained calm while everyone else panicked. Within 2 years, travelers began asking for the young healer by name. Within 3, villagers trusted her more than doctors twice her age. She saved children. She delivered babies. She comforted the dying. Little by little, the frightened young woman who had left the Alpha Kingdom disappeared. Someone stronger took her place. Rowan grew quickly. Too quickly. He rarely complained. He rarely cried. Instead, he watched everything. When patients visited the clinic, he quietly sat in the corner with a small notebook. After they left, he always asked questions. Why did the old man cough before he fainted? Why did you mix those 2 herbs together? Why did the little girl stop shaking after you cooled her hands? Selene never answered him like a child. She answered him honestly. Knowledge was never something children had to earn, only something they had to respect. One afternoon, shortly after Rowan turned 4, they sat together outside the cottage watching birds gather along the fence. The question arrived without warning. Do I have a father? The world seemed to pause. Selene had imagined this conversation hundreds of times. She had rehearsed speeches, prepared explanations, built careful lies she hoped she would never need. Yet none of them came. She looked at her son. You do? Rowan nodded thoughtfully. Where is he? She stared toward the distant mountains. Far away. He accepted the answer more easily than she expected. Is he a good man? Her heart tightened. She wanted to answer immediately. She could not. Finally, she smiled sadly. I think he is a man who made one terrible decision. Rowan seemed satisfied. He picked up another stone and tossed it into the stream, then asked about birds instead. Children sometimes showed more mercy than adults ever could. That night, after Rowan had fallen asleep, Selene stood outside beneath a sky full of stars. She realized something that frightened her. She had gone an entire day without thinking about Leoric. Then another day. Then another. His face had begun to blur. His voice had faded. Only one memory refused to disappear. Not the rejection. Not the ceremony. Not the palace. The moment she almost told him. Sometimes she wondered, what would have happened if she had spoken? Would he have stopped her? Would he have chosen her? Or would the council have chosen for both of them? She would never know. And she no longer needed the answer. Because every morning, when Rowan smiled at her, she remembered why she had remained silent. 6 years passed. The little cottage became a respected healing clinic. Villagers traveled for miles seeking Selene's help. Her hands healed wounds. Her words calmed fear. Her quiet strength became part of the village itself. She no longer measured time by the day she had been rejected. She measured it by Rowan's birthdays, by each lesson he learned, by every promise she managed to keep. She believed the hardest years were finally behind them. Life, at last, had become peaceful. Then one ordinary afternoon, Rowan dropped a wooden cup onto the kitchen floor. The sound startled her. She turned. He was standing perfectly still. His face had gone pale. One hand pressed tightly against his chest. His breathing came in shallow, uneven bursts. For the first time in 6 years, fear returned to Selene's eyes. Not for herself, for him. And every instinct she possessed as a healer whispered the same terrifying truth. This was something she could not cure alone. The village physician did not speak immediately. He finished examining Rowan in complete silence. He checked the boy's pulse twice, listened to his breathing, asked him to walk across the room. Then he looked at Selene. His expression told her the truth before his words ever could. This isn't something I can treat. The room became painfully quiet. Selene had spent 6 years becoming the healer everyone else depended on. She knew enough to recognize the look in another healer's eyes. It was not uncertainty. It was honesty. What is it? She asked. A rare condition affecting the heart and the wolf spirit. He folded his hands together. It can be managed. Hope flickered inside her, but only by someone who has treated it before. The hope faded just as quickly. Where? The old healer hesitated. There are only 4 specialists I know of. He pulled a worn map from a shelf. One by one, he marked 4 locations. Selene studied each name carefully. The first was too far. Rowan would never survive the journey. The second had a reputation built on rumors rather than results. The third, Petra quietly shook her head. Not him. Only one name remained. Ashvale. Selene stared at the map. Her fingers tightened around its edges. Ashvale, a peaceful trading town, only 12 miles from the eastern border of Thane territory. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Petra said nothing. She knew exactly what that name meant. That evening, rain tapped softly against the cottage windows. Rowan had already fallen asleep. Selene remained alone at the kitchen table. The map lay open before her. She traced the road with one finger. Every mile brought her closer to the life she had buried. Closer to the palace. Closer to the council. Closer to Leoric Thane. She closed her eyes. For 6 years, she had convinced herself that chapter was over. Now fate had quietly reopened the book. The next morning she began writing letters. One to every healer whose name she could find. Every traveler leaving Dunmere carried one with them. For 3 days she waited. 3 endless days. Replies slowly returned. The first confirmed the journey was impossible. The second offered treatments that would not help. The third never arrived. Only Ashvale remained. The answer had never changed. She had simply hoped another answer would appear. It never did. Petra found her standing outside the clinic before sunrise, watching the village wake, watching the place she had built with her own hands. You've already decided. Selene smiled faintly. I've been pretending I hadn't. Petra stepped beside her. You built something beautiful here. I know. You may lose it. I know. You may have to face him. Selene looked toward the eastern road. I know. Neither woman spoke again for several moments. Finally, Selene asked the question she had feared most. If Rowan were your grandson, would you go? Petra answered without hesitation. I would already be packing. Selene laughed softly. It was a tired laugh, almost broken. Then I suppose I already know my answer. She spent the next 2 days preparing the clinic. Every patient received written instructions. Every jar of medicine was carefully labeled. Every account was organized. She behaved as though she would return in 2 weeks. Deep inside, she was not certain she ever would. Before leaving, she stood in the doorway of the clinic. Her fingers brushed the wooden sign hanging above the entrance. She had carved it herself. Every letter, every line, every rough edge. 6 years earlier she had arrived with nothing. Now she was leaving behind a life people respected. Not because anyone had given it to her. Because she had earned it. She whispered quietly, I'll come back. She hoped it wasn't a promise she couldn't keep. Rowan noticed her silence. Are you worried? She smiled. A little. About me? She knelt in front of him. I'm worried because I love you. He considered that answer, then wrapped both arms around her neck. I'll be brave. She closed her eyes. No. She kissed his forehead. You don't have to be brave. You only have to let me protect you. They left before sunrise. The village still slept. Petra waited beside the road. She carried a small cloth bundle. Food. Selene accepted it. Thank you. Petra gently touched Rowan's shoulder. You'll come back. Stronger. I will. The old woman smiled. I believe you. No dramatic farewell. No tears. Just quiet faith. Sometimes. That was stronger. The first day of travel passed peacefully. Fields slowly replaced forests. The air smelled different. Sharper. Familiar. Too familiar. Rowan enjoyed the journey. He asked endless questions about rivers, birds, old stone bridges, and why wolves preferred mountain forests. Selene answered every one. Anything to keep her own thoughts quiet. Around midday, they stopped beside a shallow stream. Rowan sat on a large stone. Sunlight danced across the water. He looked peaceful. Selene watched him from a distance. Really watched him. His dark hair. The calm way he observed everything before speaking. The steady confidence in the way he carried himself. Then, his profile caught the afternoon light. Her breath caught. There it was again. The strong jaw. The gray eyes. The quiet authority. For years she had told herself the resemblance was small. Something only a mother would notice. She finally admitted the truth. Anyone who had ever seen Alpha Leoric would recognize whose son Rowan was. A cold wave of fear spread through her chest. Not because of Leoric. Because of everyone else. The guards. The merchants. The elders. The servants. Someone would see it. Someone would know. And once that happened, silence would no longer protect them. Mom. Rowan looked up. You've been staring. She forced a smile. You remind me of someone. A good person? He asked the question with complete innocence. Selene looked toward the distant mountains. The mountains where the Alpha Kingdom waited. After a long pause, she answered honestly. A complicated one. Rowan nodded. As long as he isn't boring. She laughed despite herself. No, he has never been boring. That night, they camped beneath towering pine trees. Rowan fell asleep quickly. Selene remained beside the fire, watching the flames, listening to the wind. Tomorrow, they would cross into Thane territory. Tomorrow, every promise she had made to herself would be tested. She placed another piece of wood onto the fire. The sparks rose into the darkness. Please, she whispered to no one. Let me save my son, without destroying the life we've built. The fire answered only with silence. Far beyond the trees, less than 2 days away, Alpha Leoric Thane had no idea that the woman he had rejected 6 years earlier was riding toward his kingdom, or that fate was bringing his son home. Ashvale was smaller than Selene had imagined. For days, she had pictured a bustling city filled with towering stone buildings and endless crowds. Instead, it was simply a quiet market town, a handful of cobbled streets, a busy square, A modest healer's clinic with faded blue shutters. Nothing extraordinary. She should have felt relieved. Ordinary places were easier to disappear inside. That was exactly what she intended to do. The physician examined Rowan the following morning. He was thorough, patient, far more experienced than anyone Selene had ever met. After nearly an hour, he finally leaned back in his chair. The condition is treatable. Selene released a breath she had been holding for days. But her heart tightened again. The treatment will take at least 2 weeks. She nodded immediately. We'll stay. The physician smiled gently. You brought him here just in time. For the first time since leaving Dunmere. Hope outweighed fear. The inn above the grain merchant shop was small but clean. Their room overlooked a narrow side street instead of the crowded market. Selene preferred it that way. Less attention, fewer questions. Every morning Rowan visited the physician. Every afternoon Selene explored the town while quietly purchasing herbs and supplies. Everything felt normal, almost peaceful. She began to believe they would leave Ashvale exactly as planned. 2 weeks. Treatment completed. Then home. No one would know they had ever been there. No one would recognize them. No one would recognize Rowan. On the 4th afternoon, Selene decided to buy fresh bread before returning to the inn. Rowan had stayed behind to rest. The physician insisted he conserve his strength between treatments. She descended the narrow wooden staircase, carrying an empty basket. The merchant downstairs greeted her warmly. The bakery just brought out fresh loaves. I'll only be a moment. She smiled politely, then reached for the front door. At that exact instant, the door swung inward. She froze. The basket slipped slightly in her hands. Standing only a few feet away was Alpha Leoric Thane. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. The afternoon. Sounds outside faded into silence. The marketplace disappeared. The years disappeared. There was only the doorway, and the 2 people standing inside it. Leoric had changed. Not dramatically. Time had added sharper lines around his eyes. A quiet weight rested across his shoulders. The confidence of a ruler remained. But something else lived behind it now. Something heavier. Something tired. He looked at her as though he couldn't decide whether she was real. Then, quietly, Selene. Not a question. Not surprise. Simply her name. As if speaking it aloud helped convince him she truly stood before him. She straightened instinctively. Alpha Thane. The title landed between them like cold steel. She watched the smallest change cross his face. He noticed it too. The distance. The formality. The wall she had built. I didn't expect to see you here. His voice remained calm. Neither accusing, nor welcoming. I'm only passing through. So I heard. She frowned slightly. You heard? The physician informed the local authorities that an unfamiliar healer had arrived with a sick child. Her stomach tightened. Of course. Border towns always reported strangers. Especially healers. Especially children. She should have expected it. She hated that she hadn't. Leoric studied her carefully. She looked healthier. Stronger. Older in the quiet way hardship aged kind people. Gone was the young woman who once stood trembling before the council. The woman before him stood differently. Balanced. Steady. As though she no longer needed permission to exist. He found himself wondering. Who had helped her become this person? Then another thought followed. No one. She had done it herself. I heard you're respected as a healer. She answered simply. I work. I've heard good things. I didn't come here for compliments. No. A faint smile almost reached his face. You never did. For the briefest moment, something familiar passed between them. Not romance. Not forgiveness. Recognition. Then it vanished. Footsteps echoed from upstairs. Selene's heart stopped. Rowan. He always came looking for her if she stayed away too long. No. Not now. Please. Not now. She turned toward the staircase just as a small voice called out. Mom. Leoric followed the sound instinctively. A little boy appeared halfway down the stairs. Dark hair. Curious gray eyes. Calm expression. He paused when he noticed the strangers. Selene's pulse thundered inside her chest. Everything inside her screamed to move. To block his view. To turn him around. To leave. She did none of those things. Because it was already too late. Rowan stepped down another stair. His eyes met Leoric's. Silence filled the room. 1 second. Then another. No one spoke. Even the grain merchant behind the counter sensed something unusual and quietly stopped arranging sacks of flour. Leoric stared. Not openly. Not rudely. Simply. Unable to look away. There was something hauntingly familiar about the boy. The shape of his face. The calm way he observed everything before reacting. Most of all, those gray eyes. Eyes Leoric had seen every morning of his adult life. In his own reflection, a strange feeling settled in his chest. Not certainty. Not yet. Recognition. The kind that arrived before understanding. Rowan tilted his head. Mom, I'm here. Selene climbed the stairs without taking her eyes off Leoric. She placed one gentle hand on Rowan's shoulder. We're leaving. The boy looked between them. You know him? Selene answered before anyone else could. He rules these lands. Rowan nodded politely, then looked directly at Leoric. Thank you for letting us stay. The simple sentence caught Leoric completely off guard. Children usually feared alphas. This boy didn't. He simply spoke honestly. Leoric found himself answering before thinking. I hope your treatment goes well. It will. Rowan smiled faintly. My mother always finds a way. Something tightened inside Leoric's chest. He didn't understand why. Selene guided Rowan back toward the stairs. Every instinct told her to leave immediately, to disappear before another word was spoken. As they reached the landing, Leoric spoke once more. How long will you be staying? She stopped, without turning around. 2 weeks. Is that enough? It has to be. He nodded slowly. If you need anything. She interrupted. Gently. We'll manage. The words were polite, but unmistakably final. She closed the door to their room, locked it, then leaned against it. Her breathing became uneven, not from fear of Leoric, from fear of what he had seen. She replayed the encounter again and again. His eyes, the way they lingered on Rowan, the silence, the questions he hadn't asked. Not yet. Across town, Leoric remained standing outside the grain merchant's shop long after Selene disappeared upstairs. His guards exchanged uncertain glances. Neither dared interrupt him. Something about that little boy refused to leave his mind. The eyes, the posture, the quiet confidence. None of it made sense. And yet, it felt impossible to ignore. He mounted his horse in silence. As they rode away, only one thought repeated itself over and over. Why did that child feel so familiar? He had no answer. But for the first time in 6 years, Alpha Leoric Thane wanted one. Leoric did not sleep that night. He had faced invading armies, negotiated impossible treaties, buried warriors who had followed him into battle. None of those memories kept him awake. One quiet little boy did. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Rowan standing halfway down the staircase. Calm, observant, gray eyes watching the world with unusual patience. The resemblance should have been impossible, yet it refused to leave him. Before sunrise, Leoric was already sitting inside his study. A cup of tea had long gone cold beside him. The morning reports remained unopened. A knock came at the door. Corwin entered. For 11 years, he had served as the Alpha's closest advisor. He noticed everything, especially the things his Alpha never said aloud. You sent for me, my lord? Leoric nodded. The healer staying in Ashvale. Corwin waited. Her name is Selene Wren. Corwin's expression remained perfectly controlled. I thought it might be. I want to know where she's staying. I already do. Leoric looked up. The grain merchant's inn. Corwin answered calmly. I arranged additional guards in the market yesterday. Discreetly. They're there to keep visitors away. Not to watch her. To protect her. Leoric studied him for a moment. You understood my intention. I've known you a long time. Silence settled between them. Finally, Corwin spoke carefully. The child. Leoric's fingers stopped moving. What about him? I noticed the resemblance. Neither man said another word. Some truths became dangerous the moment they were spoken aloud. After a long silence, Leoric finally asked, What did you see? Corwin chose each word with extraordinary care. I saw a boy with your eyes. Your posture. Your composure. Another pause. And I saw a woman who seemed frightened. Not of you, but of what you might realize. Leoric slowly looked toward the window. Outside, the kingdom was beginning another ordinary day. Inside, nothing felt ordinary anymore. Do not investigate the child. Corwin looked surprised. My lord, not yet. If there is an answer, I want to hear it from Selene. Corwin inclined his head. As you wish. Then he hesitated. May I ask one question? Leoric nodded. If the boy truly is yours, what changes? Leoric didn't answer immediately, because for the first time, he genuinely didn't know. Across town, Selene sat beside Rowan's bed. He was sleeping peacefully after yesterday's treatment. She envied him. Children carried fear differently. They trusted tomorrow. Adults remembered yesterday. She quietly adjusted the blanket around his shoulders, then walked to the window. Ashvale was already awake. Merchants opened their shops. Children chased each other through the square. Life continued, as though nothing had changed. But everything had. Yesterday, Leoric had seen Rowan. She could still picture the exact moment. The silence. His eyes. The questions forming behind them. He hadn't asked. Not yet. That frightened her more than anger would have. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. The physician entered carrying a leather folder. "I've reviewed Rowan's examination." Selene stood immediately. "And the treatment is working." Relief flooded through her. But her heart tightened again. "There are signs this condition may be inherited." Selene froze. Inherited. The word echoed inside her mind. The physician continued, "It doesn't always happen. But bloodlines matter." She forced herself to remain calm. "Can anything else help?" He hesitated. "There are old records, suggesting certain alpha bloodlines possess unusually strong healing abilities." Selene felt the room spin for just a moment. She already knew which bloodline he meant. Later that afternoon, Rowan insisted on walking through the marketplace. "I feel better. You need fresh air." Selene smiled. "Only for a little while." They wandered slowly between market stalls. Rowan stopped to watch a blacksmith shape glowing steel. His eyes sparkled with fascination. How does he know exactly where to hit? Selene laughed softly. Years of practice. So, he learned by making mistakes? Just like everyone else. Rowan seemed pleased by that answer. Not far away, Leoric was inspecting repairs to the Eastern Trade Road. His attention remained on the workers. Until he heard laughter. A child's laughter. He turned instinctively. There, across the market, he saw Selene and Rowan. Neither had noticed him. He should have continued walking. Instead, he stood completely still, watching from a distance. Not as an alpha, as a man trying to understand something impossible. Rowan picked up a small wooden wolf from a craftsman's table. "It's beautiful." The merchant smiled. "You have good taste. It's carved from mountain oak." Rowan carefully placed it back. "I don't have enough money." Leoric crossed the distance before he had fully decided to move. "I'll buy it." Selene looked up sharply. "No." Her answer came instantly. Too quickly. The merchant glanced nervously between them. Leoric looked at her. "I wasn't offering charity. I simply thought he liked it." "He does," Selene answered quietly. "But if he wants it, he'll earn it." Rowan looked at his mother, then at the alpha. Finally, he nodded. "Mom's right." Leoric felt something unexpected. Respect. The boy wasn't disappointed. He wasn't embarrassed. He simply accepted his mother's decision, exactly as Leoric himself might have accepted a difficult truth. As they turned to leave, Rowan suddenly stopped. He looked directly at Leoric. "Can I ask you something?" Selene's heart skipped. Leoric smiled gently. "Of course." Rowan pointed toward the workers repairing the road. "Why are you helping them?" The question caught everyone nearby off guard. Most children would have asked about wolves, or swords, or castles, not responsibility. Leoric glanced toward the damaged road. "Because one broken road can make life harder for thousands of people." Rowan thought about that, then nodded. "That makes sense." Without another word, he reached for Selene's hand. Together, they continued walking. Leoric watched them disappear into the crowd. The wooden wolf still rested on the merchant's table, untouched. That evening, Corwin entered the study once again. "My lord." Leoric didn't look up. "I've made a decision." Corwin waited. "I need to speak with Selene. Alone. No guards. No counsel. No witnesses." Corwin hesitated. "And if she refuses?" Leoric looked out the window toward the lights of Ashvale. His answer came quietly. "Then I accept it." Because for the first time in many years, he understood something power had never taught him. Some doors could not be opened by authority, only by trust. And trust could never be demanded. It had to be earned. The knock came just after sunrise. 3 soft knocks. Not the firm rhythm of a soldier. Not the hurried pounding of someone bringing bad news. Patient. Respectful. Selene already knew who stood outside. She had expected this moment since the instant Rowan walked down those stairs. She opened the door. Leoric stood alone. No guards. No advisors. No royal cloak. Only a dark coat, travel boots still dusted with morning dirt, and the quiet expression of a man who had spent the entire night arguing with himself. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, he broke the silence. "May I come in?" It was the first real question he had asked her in 6 years. Selene stepped aside. "You may." The room was simple. A wooden table, 2 chairs, a small fireplace, medicine bottles neatly arranged on a shelf. Nothing luxurious, nothing unnecessary. Leoric looked around quietly. This was the life she had built. Without him, he realized something uncomfortable. She had not merely survived. She had succeeded, and she had done it without asking anything from the man who had once promised to protect her. He took the chair opposite hers. The morning sunlight stretched across the table between them. Neither reached across it. "I wanted to thank you." Selene looked at him, surprised. "For what?" "For bringing Rowan here." She frowned slightly. "I came because he needed treatment." "I know." Leoric nodded. "But you still crossed the one border you swore never to cross." A faint smile appeared on her lips. "It seems you know me better than I thought." "No." His answer came quietly. "I've spent 6 years realizing how little I knew." Silence settled over the room again. Not awkward. Heavy. Finally, Leoric looked directly into her eyes. "I need to ask you something." Selene didn't answer. She simply waited. "Is Rowan?" He stopped. The words refused to come. Not because he feared the answer. Because once spoken, nothing could ever return to the way it had been. Selene finished the question for him. "Your son?" He nodded once. She held his gaze, then answered with complete honesty. "Yes." No hesitation. No drama. No attempt to soften the truth. Just one word. The room became impossibly still. Leoric lowered his eyes. For a long moment, he simply breathed. He had already known. Some part of him had recognized the truth the moment Rowan looked at him in the inn. Yet hearing it spoken aloud felt entirely different. Real. Permanent. "Did you know?" "Before the rejection?" Selene nodded. "I found out 2 days before the ceremony." Leoric closed his eyes. "And you never told me." She looked out the window. "I almost did." That answer caught him off guard. She continued quietly. "I almost told you 3 different times. The first was outside your office. The second was the morning of the ceremony. The third," she paused, "was after you rejected me." Leoric looked up. "What stopped you?" Selene answered without anger. "Because you had already made your choice." He stared at her. "I didn't know." "I know. If I had known, you would have stopped me." "Yes." "And why would you have stopped me?" He opened his mouth, then stopped. She answered for him. "Because your child would have changed everything." He couldn't deny it. She continued. "You wouldn't have chosen me. You would have chosen responsibility. And those are not the same thing." The words struck harder than any accusation. Because they were true. "I spent years asking myself whether I had done the right thing." Selene's voice remained calm. "I wondered whether Rowan deserved a father." She looked down at her folded hands. "Then one day, I realized something." Leoric waited. "I wasn't protecting myself. I was protecting him." She lifted her eyes again. "I never wanted my son to grow up wondering whether his father stayed because he loved us, or because duty forced him to." The silence afterward stretched between them like a bridge neither knew how to cross. Leoric leaned back slowly. "I owe you an apology." Selene shook her head. "No." His eyebrows lifted. "No. You owe Rowan your honesty. You owe yourself accountability. But an apology," she smiled sadly, "doesn't give us back 6 years." He accepted the truth without argument. She was right. Some losses could never be repaired, only honored. After several quiet moments, Leoric spoke again. "I've been thinking about that day. The rejection. The council. The alliance." Selene listened without interrupting. "I convinced myself there were only 2 choices. My people, or us." He laughed bitterly. "I never questioned who taught me those were the only options." Selene finally asked, "And now?" He met her eyes. "Now I know I stopped asking questions the moment they became uncomfortable." Another silence. This one gentler, less defensive, more honest. Leoric folded his hands on the table. "I am not asking you to forgive me. I wouldn't believe it if you did." Selene remained quiet. "I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking you to rebuild what I destroyed." He took a slow breath. "I'm asking for one chance." She looked at him carefully. "A chance to do what?" "To know my son." His voice almost broke. And he hesitated. "To become the kind of father he deserves. Not the father he already was." The father he hoped he could become. The difference mattered. Selene noticed it immediately. She looked toward the empty bed where Rowan had slept the night before. The physician still had him for another examination. He doesn't know. Leoric nodded. I assumed he didn't. He knows he has a father. He knows you're far away. He knows you made one terrible decision. Leoric smiled faintly. That seems accurate. It is. Another quiet moment passed. Then Selene spoke the words he feared most. I won't let anyone decide Rowan's future. Not the council. Not the elders. And not even you. Leoric answered without hesitation. They won't. She searched his face, looking for ambition, control, authority. She found none. Only regret and determination. Leoric stood. I won't ask for your answer today. Selene looked surprised. You won't. He shook his head. No. I've already taken enough decisions away from you. He walked toward the door, then stopped. Without turning around, he said quietly, for what it's worth, I am grateful you raised him to become the boy I met yesterday. Selene looked at his back. He became that boy because I never taught him to hate. You. Leoric closed his eyes. Those words hurt more than any punishment could have. Because she easily could have. And she hadn't. He opened the door. Morning light poured into the room. Before leaving, he spoke one final sentence. I'll earn whatever place you allow me to have. No more. No less. Then he walked away. Selene remained seated long after the door closed. For the first time in 6 years. She didn't feel anger. She didn't feel relief. She felt uncertainty. And uncertainty was far more dangerous. Because uncertainty meant one impossible thing had begun to grow again. Hope. By noon, every elder had gathered inside the council chamber. No one knew why. Emergency meetings were rare. Emergency meetings called by the Alpha himself were even rarer. The long oak table was already full when Leoric entered. No ceremonial cloak. No royal announcement. No unnecessary formality. He simply walked to the head of the table and remained standing. The room fell silent. Elder Marsh spoke first. My Alpha, has something happened at the eastern border? Leoric looked around the room. At every face. Some had advised him. Some had manipulated him. Some had watched silently 6 years earlier while a young woman walked away carrying his child. None of them knew that yet. You all remember Selene Wren. No one answered. They remembered. Of course they remembered. Marsh folded his hands. The rejected mate. Leoric's eyes settled on him. No, he said quietly. The woman all of us failed. The room stiffened. Marsh cleared his throat. If this concerns the alliance from 6 years ago, that matter was settled long ago. No, Leoric replied. It was buried. There is a difference. Silence. Leoric slowly placed both hands on the table. When I rejected Selene, I believed I understood the cost. He looked toward the windows. I was wrong. No one interrupted. My son was born shortly after she left. For one long second, no one moved. The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Then whispers erupted around the chamber. Marsh stood abruptly. My Alpha. Leoric raised one hand. The room became silent again. I am not finished. My son is 6 years old. He has lived his entire life outside this territory. He has never benefited from this throne. He has never carried this family's name. He has never asked anything of me. Every sentence became heavier than the last. And that is my responsibility. Marsh slowly sat back down. His expression remained carefully controlled. My Alpha, surely this matter requires discussion. It does not. Leoric answered immediately. It requires responsibility. Another elder leaned forward. The existence of an heir changes the political balance. It changes nothing. Leoric's voice remained calm. My son is not a political negotiation. He is not a symbol. He is not leverage. He is a child. Marsh exchanged glances with several elders. You must understand. The council has obligations. Leoric met his gaze. So do I. Another elder spoke carefully. If the boy is officially recognized, neighboring pacts may challenge succession. They may question the alliance. They may question stability. Leoric nodded. I know. And if stability depends upon pretending my son does not exist, then our stability was never real. The room fell silent once more. Leoric took a slow breath. 6 years ago, I allowed politics to convince me that there was only one correct decision. I have replayed that day countless times. I cannot change what happened, but I refuse to repeat it. Marsh's voice grew firmer. Then what exactly are you proposing? Leoric looked directly at every elder before answering. I am not proposing. I am informing. The temperature inside the chamber seemed to drop. My son will never be used to strengthen treaties. He will never be promised to another pack. He will never become currency for peace. No council member will approach Selene. No council member will approach Rowan. No negotiations. No pressure. No conditions. If anyone ignores this order, they answer directly to me. Several elders shifted uneasily. Marsh remained perfectly still. You would issue such an order for a woman who has already left your life? Leoric answered without hesitation. No, for the woman who should never have been forced to leave. No one spoke, not even Marsh, because every person in that room understood what those words truly meant. The Alpha was admitting his own failure, publicly, without excuse, without sharing the blame. Leoric continued. I rejected my mate. I will carry that choice for the rest of my life. But Rowan will not carry the consequences of my mistake. He reached inside his coat, removed a folded document, and placed it gently on the table. I signed this before entering. Marsh frowned. What is it? A royal protection decree. The elders exchanged uncertain looks. Leoric continued. It places Selene Wren and Rowan Wren under my direct protection. No one may question them. No one may investigate them. No one may interfere with their lives. Not without my written permission. Marsh stared at the document. My Alpha. This limits the council's authority. Correct. It also limits yours. Correct. And if the council refuses? Leoric's expression never changed. Then the council may explain publicly why it wishes to control a 6-year-old child. No one answered. There was no argument left. The meeting ended minutes later. Not because every elder agreed, but because every elder understood. The decision had already been made. Outside the council chamber, Corwin waited. He fell into step beside Leoric. You knew they would resist. I did. You also knew they couldn't stop you. I hoped. Corwin smiled faintly. There is a difference. There is. Leoric looked toward the eastern road. A week ago, I thought leadership meant making the hardest decision. He paused. Now I think leadership means accepting when your hardest decision was wrong. That afternoon, Corwin rode alone toward Ashvale. The sealed decree rested safely inside his saddlebag. His instructions were simple. Deliver it directly to Selene. Explain everything. Leave immediately. Ask for nothing. Meanwhile, Selene sat beside Rowan outside the healer's clinic. The treatment had gone well. Color had finally returned to the boy's face. He looked stronger, healthier. He laughed at something a passing puppy had done. Selene smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had allowed herself in days. Then she noticed a familiar rider entering the town square. Corwin. He dismounted quietly, walked toward her, and respectfully bowed his head. Lady Selene. She looked surprised. What happened? Corwin carefully removed the sealed document. The Alpha asked me to deliver this personally. He said, you deserve to know what happened today. Selene accepted the letter slowly. The royal seal was unmistakable. Her hands suddenly felt heavier. She looked at Corwin. What does he want from me? Corwin answered exactly as instructed. Nothing. He asked me to make sure you understood that. He wants nothing. Selene broke the seal. Her eyes moved across the first page. Then the second. Halfway through, she stopped reading. Not because she didn't understand. Because she did. For the first time in 6 years. Leoric had chosen them. Without asking for anything in return. Without asking whether she would ever forgive him. Without asking whether she would stay. Simply because it was the right thing to do. A single tear escaped before she could stop it. Not from heartbreak. Not from regret. But from the unbearable weight of witnessing the man she had once loved become the man she had always hoped he could be. Selene did not go to the Alpha's estate immediately. She waited until Rowan had fallen asleep. The physician assured her that the latest treatment had worked exactly as expected. For the first time in weeks, his breathing was steady. His heartbeat was strong. She brushed a strand of dark hair away from his forehead. You'll always be my first choice. She whispered the words she had spoken years ago. But this time, they carried a different meaning. She no longer had to protect him alone. Whether she accepted Leoric or not, her son would never again be invisible. Outside, the evening sky glowed with soft shades of gold and violet. Ashvale settled into its peaceful rhythm. Shops closed. Lanterns flickered to life. Selene walked alone through quiet streets until the Alpha's estate appeared beyond the trees. She stopped at the gate, not because she was afraid, because 6 years earlier, she had walked away from another gate believing she would never return. Life had a strange sense of symmetry. The guards recognized her immediately. Neither questioned her. Neither announced her. One simply opened the gate. The Alpha is expecting no one tonight. Selene smiled faintly. Neither was I. Leoric stood alone in the garden behind the manor. No guards. No advisors. No symbols of power. Only a man watching the last light disappear beyond the hills. He heard footsteps behind him. He turned. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. Not at first. The silence between them no longer felt like an enemy. It felt earned. You came. His voice was almost hesitant. I did. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure either. A faint smile touched both of them, then faded, because neither had come for easy conversation. Selene held the folded decree in her hands. I read every word. Leoric nodded. I meant every word. I know. She stepped closer. Why now? He looked toward the distant mountains before answering. For 6 years, I believed leadership meant sacrificing the people closest to me for the greater good. I thought that was strength. He looked back at her. It wasn't. It was fear. She listened quietly. I was afraid that if I questioned the council, everything would fall apart. He laughed softly. The truth is, everything that truly mattered fell apart because I didn't. Selene lowered her eyes. I spent years convincing myself I didn't need you. You didn't. He answered immediately. You proved that. She looked up again. No. She shook her head gently. I needed the man I believed you could become. Her voice remained calm. I simply stopped believing he existed. Those words settled heavily between them. Leoric accepted them without protest. Because they were deserved. I can't give you back 6 years. No. I can't erase Rowan's first steps. No. I can't be there for the nights he was sick. No. Every answer came quietly. Without anger. Without accusation. Just truth. Leoric took a slow breath. But I can be there tomorrow. Selene studied him carefully. You really believe tomorrow is enough? No. I believe tomorrow is all that's left. The wind stirred gently through the trees. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Selene asked the question that had followed her for 6 years. If I had told you, that day, what would you have done? Leoric did not answer immediately. He refused to lie. Finally, I would have stopped you. She nodded once. I know. I would have fought the council. I know. I would have convinced myself I was choosing you. A painful silence followed. Then he whispered, but you would never have believed it. A single tear rolled down Selene's cheek. Not because he had hurt her, because he finally understood. She wiped the tear away herself. I don't need promises anymore. I know. I don't need to hear that you love me. I know. I don't need a crown. I know. Leoric smiled sadly. What do you need? She looked directly into his eyes. I need Rowan to grow up seeing what real choices look like. Not perfect people. People who choose to do the right thing, even when they're late. Leoric nodded slowly. I can do that. No. She corrected gently. You can try. A quiet laugh escaped him. That's fair. They stood together watching the stars slowly appear. Not touching. Not rushing. Not pretending the past had disappeared. Some wounds healed. Others became part of who you were. Neither expected miracles. Only honesty. The following morning, Leoric arrived at the physician's clinic. Not as the Alpha. As a father. Rowan looked up from a wooden puzzle. Hi. Leoric smiled. Good morning. Rowan tilted his head. My mom said you're very busy. I used to think I was. Rowan considered that answer carefully, then scooted over on the bench. You can sit here. Leoric sat. The silence felt strangely comfortable. After a minute, Rowan pointed toward the complicated wooden mechanism beside the window. Can you figure out how it works? Leoric studied it. I can try. For the next half hour, neither of them spoke much. They simply worked together, taking pieces apart, putting them back together, sometimes failing, sometimes laughing quietly. When the puzzle finally clicked into place, Rowan smiled proudly. We make a pretty good team. Leoric felt something tighten painfully inside his chest. Not regret. Gratitude. A second chance was never guaranteed. It was given, one small moment at a time. 2 weeks later, the physician delivered the news they had all hoped for. Rowan's condition had stabilized. He would need future checkups, but he would live a healthy life. Selene closed her eyes. Relief washed over her so completely that she nearly forgot to breathe. She had crossed an entire kingdom for those words. They had been worth every mile. She returned to Dunmere exactly as planned. Her clinic remained open. Her patients returned. Life resumed, but not exactly as before. Every month, Leoric traveled to Dunmere, sometimes for a single afternoon, sometimes only long enough to share a meal with Rowan. He never arrived unannounced. He never demanded time. He always asked. Sometimes Selene said yes. Sometimes she said no. He respected both answers. Trust, like healing, could not be rushed. The seasons changed. Winter became spring. Spring became summer. One afternoon, Rowan looked up while helping his mother gather herbs. Mom, yes. Do you think people can change? Selene looked toward the distant mountains. She thought about the frightened young Alpha who had obeyed everyone except his own heart. She thought about the man who had stood before an entire council and protected a child without asking for anything in return. Then she smiled. I think people become who they choose to be. Rowan nodded thoughtfully. I like that answer. So do I. Some stories end with a wedding. Some end with revenge. Some end with perfect forgiveness. This one did not. Because real love is rarely built in a single dramatic moment. It is built in ordinary days, in difficult conversations, in promises kept after trust has been broken. Selene never forgot the day she walked away from the Great Hall. Leoric never forgot the day he chose politics over love. Neither erased the past. Instead, they built something stronger than memory. They built choice. And every morning after that, Rowan woke knowing one simple truth. He had never been a bargaining chip. He had never been a secret. He had never been unwanted. He was chosen by his mother, by his father, and finally, by both of them together.